Hello, my fellow FNAF fans. Welcome to a Tales from the Pizzaplex tier list. And now that the series is over, like, I can finally do it now. I've wanted to do it for a while, but you know what? Each time books came out, like, I wasn't able to do a tier list because, like, you know, it's like it just wasn't complete. It didn't feel right. But now that everything is out, I can finally evaluate what's the best, what sucks, and, like, what else is in between. Anyway, so yeah, we're just gonna get off. We're just gonna start with this tier list. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And wow, that was an awkward opening. I'm also like really itchy right now. Also, ignore my haircut. I know my haircut's bad, so just ignore it. Like, okay, it's very simple. Anyway, into the tier list ranking, starting with Lally's Game. Lally's Game, I haven't read it in a while. I think the last time I read it was like 4 months ago, I think. Like, I read it a second time. I read almost all these stories at least twice. I know there's some that I didn't. But Lally's Game, I'm going to give a solid B. It's not bad at all. And I think that it's really interesting, like, seeing him constantly torment Selena and then end up dying. And it's very possible it is an Eleanor story. Or something like that, you know, whatever Eleanor plotline they got going on with Tales. I really have no clue, like, where they're gonna take that plotline, but Lally's Game overall is a good story. Kate and Selena are good characters. Not that much to say about that. Alright, Frailty. So, this is also gonna be a controversial opinion, but I'm gonna put Frailty in B. It's not necessarily that it's a bad story, it just, when you read it, it just feels like you're reading To Be Beautiful all over again, which is like, To Be Beautiful was good. This is just slightly less good than To Be Beautiful. I know a lot of people like may rag on me for like liking To Be Beautiful as much as I do. I know some people do, like in my friend group. But either way, Frailty, like it's a good story. But is it top tier? No. I do think that it is really interesting seeing the pendant again though. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to Under Construction, which is something that I know someone's gonna hate. Under Construction is S tier. So many people hated Under Construction, and I don't understand why. It is so fun to read. If you read it, you very much will enjoy. Or I understand some people obviously won't. It's not for everyone, but Maya's a fantastic character. It was so unexpected when I read it. I'm like, wait a sec, you're puking out goo babies? That is a very strange. It was really fun to read. It's super well written. And just, I had a lot of fun with it. It is definitely my favorite of book number 1. I know, again, a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on that, but whatever. Under Construction is S. Moving on to Epilogue 1, aka the only good one, because it actually set up interesting things, and Gil, Danny, and Theo. Oh my gosh, my dogs. Gil, Danny, and Theo are good characters, and it gives us the origin of the Mimic, despite how much I despise him. He is the worst character in all of fiction. But overall, Epilogue 1 is good. It's a good read, and it does give good description of the Mimic, which is pretty cool. And it's interesting. It was interesting to see where it would take. Now, you'll see my opinions on the Epilogues later in this tier list, but yeah, Epilogue 1's a good A. Haps, on the other hand, is going an F. This is no contest. This is the worst story in Tales. It is so bad. It is so unbelievably boring. When I read it, I think it is the only story that I never truly finished. I got through 75-80% of it, and I was so bored that I just finished. Like, I went to a summary, and I'm like, that end's still so boring, they just die. Whoa. Dude, I seriously don't know what went through Scott's head to think that, oh yeah, we are going to make a story where we have 2 kids rushing around in tubes, and then they get killed. Like, why is that interesting? It's not. It's such a boring story. I don't understand why it exists. I wish it didn't. It is the worst story in Tales, and one of the worst stories Scott has ever written. Moving on to Help Wanted, however, I'm going to give an S. Now, if you had asked me a little while ago, I would have put it above Under Construction and one of the best stories in S. However, since we now know that the Storyteller's in 2024, you have to go back and look. Oh yeah, he's not making the games that we see in VR. Because, you know, if he is doing that, then he's making FNAF 3 in like 2020 or so, thanks to hand unit at the beginning of FNAF VR. So, no, he's making the He's making like just indie games that we never see, unfortunately, and then Fazbear Entertainment turns it into like, you know, more real events or whatever. I don't know. Like, it's a little confusing, but they are not games made by Steve, which is super annoying to me. However, Help Wanted is a fantastic story, and it definitely gives good origins of the indie gamer, something we wanted to know. Some people say that Help Wanted is their favorite story. It's not my favorite story, but I admit that it is really good. Now, moving on to my actual favorite story is B7. See, B7 is probably the only FNAF story to actually make me cry, because when you read through B7, it tackles something far more than murderous serial killers or disturbing experiments or whatever. It tackles mental illness and thinking about something that you are not, which is extremely horrifying, especially in the context of B7, where his mom committed suicide, his dad ran away, and he's getting all these things to absolutely ruin his life because of suffering from an extreme delusion. And it is honestly so sad when you read the end of the story. And I'll explain B7 too later and why it's not my favorite, but B7 as a standalone story is just perfection. Some of the writing is just insane. If you actually read through, and there's just some writing in it that's like, you know, Billy did not feel any emotions, but he felt a spark of energy whenever his mom said, "He's my son." Like, how do you get stuff like that? That is just, that's so insane. This thing is a masterpiece, and it is the best story in both Tales and Frights. And in my opinion, it's close to maybe one other, but really it's far and away the best in my opinion. B7 definitely SSS. Now moving on to Epilogue 2. Yeah, Epilogue 2 is D. Now, is it as bad as the other ones? No, because we actually get introductions to the characters, and then they go in, and they don't actually die. So, Epilogue 2 has some interesting stuff, like the carnival and all that, but like all the other epilogues, it is so boring, because it sets up characters that I do not care about at all. So, and also it's just it just drags on and on and on. It feels like a show. It feels like Stranger Things Season 4, which is like, you could have made everything so much better if you just shrunk it down by like 5 times the amount, like seriously. But Epilogue 2, is it the worst? No. You know what, might as well just put the worst in order. Epilogue 3 is the worst, or no, Epilogue 3 is not the worst. Epilogue 4 is the worst. Nope, never mind. Epilogue 3 and 4 are ridiculously boring, but Epilogue 5 is the worst, because what's his name? Adrian, I think it is. Is it Adrian, or is it like one of the other guys? They literally just do the exact same thing that killed one of the other guys when trying to go, like, they try to escape to the fan, which just killed someone. There's remains there's even mention of the remains of a person's body at the bottom, and then you actually do that. I don't understand why you have to do this. You, like seriously, like, if you think about like how it actually works, it doesn't make sense at all. Like, why something would go through this person's mind, because like, they just died. You are outright committing suicide. There is another way out. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. But is it worse than Haps? No, Haps is way worse because it's way longer. Anyway, moving on to Pressure, which Pressure is a fantastic story. I'm gonna give it A above Epilogue 1. If you read Pressure, it's really, really interesting, and you actually like are scared for Luca, because Luca can't speak. Like, the fact that when he gets spring-locked and he's like role-playing, like he's in a role-play chamber, he's absolutely screwed because he has no way to communicate with his friends, and when he speaks, it sounds like he's like mimicking Springtrap. It is actually really disturbing. And not only that, but it's a really fun story to read, and you really, really enjoy Luca's character overall. And another attraction for the Pizzaplex, like who doesn't love like reading that about that? Really dope. But Pressure, yeah, Pressure definitely gets an A. My favorite story from book 3. Now, as for Somnophobia, for some reason, it's Impulse 7's favorite story ever. I reread it recently, and like, it's good, but it's not like, does it excel like stories like these 3? No, not even close. But it is a good story, and I would argue that's better than Lila's Game and Frailty. It is really interesting to see that they're experimenting on remnant harvesters specifically. Like, it's not even body swapping anymore, it's just trapping them. Which is really, really interesting. Also, like you know, the concept is really cool. Like, you know, when they use the moon sphere, and the connection between Sam and his dad it works. But like, is it the best story ever? No, I don't think so. I really don't think that it has that much going for it. There you go. Yeah, Somnophobia is B tier. Kohophobia, on the other hand, kind of suffers the same problem from Haps, but not even close to as bad, because Kohophobia actually, like, is an enjoyable story to read, especially because they gave Ballora some time to shine, which, again, also feels like another, like, teaser for, like, the upcoming sister location, Help Wanted 2. But I'm glad that they gave Ballora some time to shine, because, like, she didn't get any in Help Wanted. However, it was really, like, confusing. I don't know how Ballora actually moved him around. Like, was she actually in the tubes with him? Because, like, that doesn't make sense. And the ending is so dumb. There's no way you're just gonna leave a guy in there to die because you're afraid of getting caught. That's, like, you cannot be that low. Are you seriously not going to help Grady at all? Like, are you kidding me? Now, but is it a bad story? No. But I do think that it is C tier because, frankly, they could have, like, in terms of, like, what they could have done with the stories, I don't really think that, like, I mean, like, like, they did the best with what they could, but this is why going through tubes is not super interesting for a story. Alright, Submechanophobia. Now, I have an explanation for why I'm putting this one in D tier. I'll put it above Epilogue 2. So Submechanophobia, it might be just the fact that the story is relatively boring in my opinion and doesn't go anywhere. It's like, this story could literally not exist and no one would care. Or like maybe ultra fans of Submechanophobia, but like in terms of the overall story, it doesn't matter. However, I remember that I had 2 hours of sleep when I was flying from a different country. Then I went to the airport, ultra sleep deprived, and because it was like a 3-hour flight to where I was going, and it was from a foreign country where I was also sick, I read Submechanophobia, and it might have been that I just did not feel good when reading it, but frankly, I was just bored, so I have bad association with the story. I'm sure if I reread it, like, I would like it more, but I really don't have any motivation to reread Submechanophobia right now, to be honest. I think that overall, like, it is a decent story, probably, but, like, I just was bored. And if we're being honest, yes, stories can be, like, really, really good, but, like, also, when it comes, it's just unnecessary. Like, it doesn't influence the lore at all. And if in terms of other stories that I have really, really high up, not only because they're good stories, but also because of lore, if it's like really good in lore, then it'll probably be even higher. Then it'll probably get a lot of bonus points, and Submechanophobia does not have any of that. All right, enough ranting about Submechanophobia. On to Animatronic Apocalypse, which, man, is it A or S? I love this story. I think that it works so well. I think I'll put it in A above Pressure. Now this is a hot take, especially because I know some people who really don't like this story, about like how just absolutely bizarre it is and how people like basically get brainwashed into a cult, because Renner is an agony creature. But if we're being honest, it is such a good read. It is so fun to read. It is really, really enjoyable. And I think that Renner is like, what's his name? Nathan? No, I haven't read the story in a little bit, but the protagonist is good, and he has some good friends, and it's really interesting to see the concept of like, if you're in the vicinity of agony, you know, will probably feel something, your emotions may like sway towards that way or something like that, because Renner is made from agony. It's also possible under Splitline that that Eleanor is Mr. Renner. I just like thought about that. But Renner is just overall a good antagonist for the story. So yeah, Animatronic Apocalypse is an A. Then we get on to Bobbiedots, and Bobbiedots, I mean, if we're being honest, like, I should probably combine these together, but either way, they are both top tier S. It is such a fun story to read. Abe is a fantastic protagonist. Sasha's a really cool character. The Bobbiedots are absolutely adorable and horrible at the same time, which is what I love. The twist, you know, I really did think that the Gen 1s were actually the ones. Like, I really, like, went back and forth. I'm like, wait, which one are the villains? I actually couldn't tell, and it was the Gen 2s. And to be honest, I was leaning towards the Gen 1s being the villains, but the Gen 2s being the villains was a really, really cool reveal. But yeah, Bobbiedots and Bobbiedots Conclusion, fantastic. I would put the Bobbiedots Part 1 above Bobbiedots Conclusion only because I like the reading about the personalities of the Bobbiedots, like, a lot when reading through it. Because the Bobbiedots are just so awesome. And we didn't get as much of that in the Bobbiedots Conclusion, although it is a good story. Also, I read these back to back, and like, I was so exhausted by the end of reading Bobbiedots Conclusion, but it doesn't matter. They are both top tier stories. They are fantastic. Then we move on to the Storyteller with arguably my favorite protagonist of all of the series. But even if it wasn't, I have to put the Storyteller in S. Especially, it may be due to mere exposure effect, because I've read it like 3 times now to like truly understand what the frick is going on with Edwin and the Storyteller. But overall, the Storyteller is just a fantastic read. You finally get some information on the high ups of Fazbear Entertainment and their corruption level, and Mr. Burroughs is an absolute asshole, so of course he's going to be like super corrupt. So the Storyteller definitely gets an S, I think so. And it's fun to read like over and over. It's also possible that Burroughs was the CEO until whoever else took over, because he was the head of the board of directors, but if we're being frankly honest, he calls himself the head of the company, which is the CEO. So it's really, really interesting to think about when it comes to the Storyteller and getting some insight. Overall, it's just a fantastic story. And then GGY. Now, if you asked me like 4 months ago if I liked GGY, I would have put this thing in D tier, because yeah, the story is fun to read. But I hate the reveal of Patient 46 being Gregory. But now I've gotten used to Greg 46, and frankly, this story is an A. Now, low A, because Greg 46 is still terrible. But when I reread the story, I'm like, this is a really well-written story, and it's really interesting, and it's really cool to see Gregory's origin story of like his influence under Glitchtrap. If he is, like, it's still sort of debatable, although probably because Dr. Rab. And you know, just overall, like there's not too many things to say about GGY's plot that is really too bad, other than the reveal of Patient 46. It really does shed some light on the tapes, which I really like. Yeah, overall GGY is an A. Now moving on to Nexie. This story I remember being so weird when I first read it, and even when understanding it, like when Tiger Rock came out. Nexie is just so bizarre. Like, I don't hate this story, not even close. I think I'm gonna put it in B, under Frailty. It's so hard to describe this story, because like there are some things that I really like about it. Like, Astrid is a really interesting protagonist. Nexie is okay. What's going on with Astrid and Nexie, but and I don't know, like, it's a well-written story, but like there's just something about it that just feels off when I read it. It's like it seems to be possessed by the Glitchtrap virus or some sort of like mimic program that's like causing it to malfunction, I think. But overall, Nexie, we'll leave it at B. I feel relatively good about that. Then we have Drowning. Now, Drowning, this has sparked some debate, which is really, really interesting. However, Drowning, I'm gonna put at A. I think, no, is it above GGY? Or is it above Epilogue 1? I think I'm gonna put it above GGY. This story I remember really, really enjoying. What's her name? Is it Kara? Kara is a good protagonist. And it's really interesting to see actually what happened to Cassidy after, you know, what happened with like UCN or whatever, if she was there, which like she seems to has to be, even if it like has to have some association, regardless if she's the one you should not have killed. But overall, I think that it's a really, really interesting development with Cassidy. But even if it isn't Cassidy, it's still just a good story overall. The writing's really cool. And it's actually really creepy thinking about how Kara is like, you know, in like a VR, and like she sees a giant supernatural thing that's causing her to stay in there. Like, I would be freaked out if I was Kara. Anyway. And then we move on to the Mimic, which like in terms of story, it's a good story. I just hate the Mimic so much. But I would say like the first half of the Mimic is top tier, and the second half is B. And in terms of lore, it's good. So I think I'll put it in A for now. I think I'll put it on the same level as Epilogue 1. Like some people say that this is the best story in the entire series. Heck no. Like that spot is reserved for B7, and that's a simple fact. That's not a debate, obviously, because my opinions are right and yours is wrong. But overall, I think that it sets up Edwin, and I think Edwin's a fantastic character. He's the only good aspect of the Mimic, or like the Mimic character himself, about how the creator of him I actually like. Same with David. David's a really interesting character in terms of the Mimic, but the second half I really like zoned out in many parts, because I'm like, so we hear what happened with Team A. They came in, they gave him legs, and then they died. I mean, like, we know about basically all of what the Mimic is at this point, so it's like, I mean, was this really necessary to send another Team B in, and then what? Did they never get it by Team C or whatever? Or did they find it 40 years later when they uncovered Mimic technology? Or did Afton steal it or something like that? I don't know. There's a lot of speculation regarding the story, but overall, like, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay. It's a good story, but like in terms of, you know, lore, I can't put it at S. I can't put it at SSS. It's A, and I'm satisfied with that. Moving on to Epilogue 6, and reading it, I actually, like, every single time I read it, like, it gets better. It is definitely one of the better epilogues. I would say that in terms of epilogues, I'll give it a C, because Jace's sacrifice at the end is actually really, really impactful. That being said, most of the story is boring, because it's just like trying to lure the Mimic in, and then so Lucia and Kelly can do their trap. Yes, so they can do their trap. I don't know why that took me so long to say, but we see that it doesn't work, which is the problem, and which is why it's so annoying. It's like, okay, you're gonna like try all these traps, and then they're all gonna die, and you're not gonna be like, they weren't even that careful about it. Now Jace was close, I will say, but Jace did do a very, very noble thing, and I think that Epilogue 6 is one of the better ones. Moving on to Tiger Rock. Now, some people are not gonna like this, but I'm gonna put it at B, high B. It's a high B. It's a good story. I think that it really does work. But what's so interesting about this story is it's like a giant compilation, or like giant combination of a bunch of different stories. You had like Step Closer with like the eyes, like, you know, following Kai everywhere. It's like Animatronic Apocalypse, because you're stuck in like a VR world. I mean, not Animatronic Apocalypse, sorry, Under Construction. It's like, I don't know, it's like drowning sort of, because you're stuck, like, you know, with the Mimic essentially, or whatever. And, you know, there's, it's like Blackbird, because it's like Tiger Rock is like constantly following you, I think, or whatever. I don't know, it's kind of a blur. I do remember the story being decent, though. I just kind of went out, and I'm like, well, that was kind of disappointing for one of the stories. It does also show an aspect of the Mimic and how the Mimic operates under the Mimic 1 program. Even if it's like completely disconnected, it's all connected to the overall database, which means that it will influence the decision. So it is pretty interesting regarding Tiger Rock. However, that leads me in to the Monty Within. And the Monty Within, I have no clue why when this came out people said it sucked. I know this says the Banshee Within, but this was like changed to the Monty Within. The Monty Within, amazing story. I have no clue how people dislike it. The Monty Within is fantastic. It is so fun to read. Kane is a great protagonist. There's some just hilarious moments. I know it's not necessarily that scary, but sometimes stories don't have to be scary and just gives us an aspect on FNAF. It was fun. Reading it, I know Kane's death is really gruesome, and like obviously that is sort of scary. Nothing scares me in FNAF anymore, really. But in terms of just the story overall, I was laughing so hard because the Monty in that story is an absolute asshole, and it works so well. Alright, anyway, yeah, Monty Within, S. This isn't debatable. Anyone who says this story sucks is wrong, just objectively. I'm kidding, obviously, I hope you guys knew that. Anyway, Bleeding Heart. Now this story, I remember this story when reading it, I enjoyed it, and then after, I just forgot about almost everything. I know that it's like Danny had small bots, and like, he just like kept designing himself to like impress Daisy, or whatever, and that like it was just like a weird way to like do a love story or whatever. But overall, it's not a bad story. I just think that it could have been done so much better because it was pretty repetitive, and then they went to like this tattoo expo and then he died. It was almost like room for one more, essentially. They like tore, like the bots inside of him tore his body apart, which is pretty interesting. I will say that. But overall, it's okay. I'll put it. Should I put it? I think I'll put it above Kohophobia, but it isn't B tier. I think that it is C tier. I think it fits there. And then Epilogue 7. The only interesting part about it is Kelly's death, which means nothing now. It's just casually gruesome. And it also sparked the whole Kelly trap debate, which is why I have a bad association with it, but thank God that's debunked now. So now I can enjoy Epilogue 11 for what it is, despite the fact that it's not much. Because all it is just the Mimic again chasing one of the characters, and then she dies when she hides in a dog costume in a very gruesome way. The gruesome way is the only reason I'm not putting this thing in F. Which is why it's in D, but other than that, it is not interesting, really. It really isn't. It's the exact same thing as Epilogue 3, 4, and 5. It's like just another death of a character that probably ends up possessing or like becoming agony for the blob. So it's like, what does this story bring? Really nothing, honestly. Just like all the other epilogues. You literally could, like, there's no point for the epilogues. It's the only thing bringing Tales down. Alright, next is B72. Now, when reading B72, I thought it was okay. But Aftermath, I'm like, wow, this is really unnecessary. There is no point for this. I have a feeling that it almost only exists because there was backlash for the original B7, which I think is so stupid. But B72 was just the most unnecessary story ever. There was no point for it. It just has Billy alive again and experiencing a normal life, and then meeting his dad, and then like Agony B7 coming after him after the hospital. What did it really bring? Nothing. It's like now just a teeny tiny little stain on B7, and that's really all it is. Now, is it a fun story to read? Sort of. I mean, it's not like ultra fun. But if we're being honest, I have to put it in D. Am I putting it above Epilogue 2? Yes, because I enjoyed it. But B72 overall is just the most unnecessary Tales story to exist. It did not need to exist at all. Alright, but yeah, we got 3 more. And we got Alone Together. Now, Alone Together, I read it. It is a good story. Now, is it one of my favorites? No, but it is actually pretty creepy. Like the visions of like the sun and Glam Rock Freddy, like when what's his name, Travis like goes into like the middle of his vision, and like there's like really weird aspects, like Marissa, for example, who can see ghosts, and like his grandma and all that. And like the twist also made no sense because every single time Travis said "Good night, Dad," he would always say "Night, Trav" back, which is like. You're gonna buy into that coincidence for 2 years? I mean, really? It's kind of a stretch, I will say. But it was a good story. And I think I'm gonna put it in, is it A or B? I think it's B. I'll put it above Somnophobia. No, or is it above Lally's Game? Yeah, I don't think it inches right to Somnophobia, but I do think that it inches above, like right under Somnophobia. And then we get to Dittophobia, which is quite literally the story that solves FNAF 4. Now, not only that, but reading this story is creepy as all hell. It is really good. Like, it is really good. But there are just so many reasons why I love this story, because it absolutely just... I remember when I first saw the leaks for this, I went crazy. And then I read it, and it was even better. And it's like, now, like, it completely transformed my vision of FNAF 4. And it's like... now we can actually theorize with FNAF 4 for what the heck is going on because the story exists. It is so good, which is why I have to put it in SSS right under B7, which I know Emperor Krakoa, this is his favorite story, and I think it's like far and away his favorite story, but it's amazing. It is fantastic. I highly recommend it. And lastly, we got to Epilogue 8, which I hate for personal reasons. It's not even that it's a bad finale. Like, it is an interesting finale because actually something happens other than someone dying. Lucia gets saved, but she gets saved by a construction worker, and he gets spring-locked in a suit that isn't burn traps. Are you kidding me? We waited 7 epilogues for this, over a year of reading these stories for a payoff at Epilogue 8, and what did we get? Nothing. We got a spring launch. Now we just have more questions regarding theorizing and have no clue what actually happened to the Mimic. It's so stupid and it makes me so angry, which is why it's second worst. Like, I know it's not boring like these, but I hate this thing for personal reasons, because it's not even like, I don't even like hate it because it's bad. I hate it because it solves quite literally nothing, which felt like a giant cheap cop-out. I was so mad when reading this because I'm like, okay, are you going to prove something at the end after reading all these boring epilogues, or are you just gonna like end it off like this? Nope, you're gonna end it off like this. And further cherry on top for how stupid this is, she gets saved by a random construction worker. Completely random. We probably will never hear him again. She just gets saved by this random person. Are you kidding me right now? That's so stupid. Alright, anyway, rant over for Epilogue 8. Yeah, there is my tier list of all the Tales stories. This series is a good series. I recommend reading it. Is it my favorite, book series ever? Probably not. Because, I actually do like reading, and this story did have a few duds. The epilogues are really bringing it down, but overall it's a fantastic book series, and I highly recommend it. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. So sorry if my camera sucked almost the whole video. Sometimes it will defocus and I can't tell if it's focused right now or not because I'm recording. Yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and as always, peace out.